a fantastic Halloween, and we're gonna wish you a happy Thanksgiving, because we're probably not gonna be back before Thanksgiving at this stage, just because LAFCA voting is getting crazy now, where the screeners are pouring in, and
now we're also a member of the
Critics' Choice.
Yeah, we just keep forgetting the name of the damn organization.
Tim and Mark and I are also new members of the Critics' Choice Association, which is much larger, presumably more prestigious. But a lot of emails come in from those guys. It's much more official, isn't it?
Yeah, lots of emails. Yeah. Lots of emails. And apparently, Swag, did you get the Chris Nolan book?
I did not.
So maybe it wasn't them. Maybe it was the other group. But anyways, it's Chris
coming,
Nolan book. It's black, and you'll get it.
I did get it. I'm looking at it right now. I forgot about that. Yeah, I did get it.
Who was that? Was that the CC people? CCA?
I don't know. I guess maybe.
I don't know either. So we're so terrible. We're bad.
So we have an announcement. People who've listened to the show a long time, of course, have any great fondness for Mark Kaiser, former host of this show. Tim, would you do the honors?
Okay, so our very, very good friend Mark got married over literally this weekend, day before yesterday. It would have been Saturday. Yeah. Here, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful wedding ceremony in Palm Springs. In the afternoon, as the sun was setting over the desert mountains, at this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful home. Not Mark's house, because Mark has a great condo, but this was like a really wow out in the middle of the desert. Yeah. With his lovely new bride Vivian, who is from Brazil, and your family and friends, and you, Wade, and our the fourth in our little group. Couldn't get
Ray
out.
Green.
Ray Green. Noted author and film critic, LA film critics, all that. Ray. Wade, and you had a whole thing with Hero. How'd that go, by the way?
It went well. So I was not able to be there because my daughter was in her first ever AYSO soccer championship, which happened to coincide with Mark's wedding. I'm sorry to report Mark got married at like 3 p.m. and her championship game went off at 2 and went to penalty kicks. Top two teams. They are the other team was undefeated. We were undefeated except for the first game of the season, which we lost to the other team. So it was it's pretty brutal. And the funny thing is, not that anyone really cares, but I'm going to tell you anyway, that my daughter's team from last year, apart from a couple of players who aged on to the other league, was pretty much split between these two teams. So all these girls all know each other, and it's all very friendly. But we wound up losing on penalty kicks on the very last one. But the good news is, even though we got second place locally, we both go on to the area tournament on December 3rd. So there's going to be a nice big tournament and lots of girls, 8 and 9 year olds running around and ponytails. It was very funny because my daughter's team, they wear yellow jerseys and the name of the team are the Mighty Minions, right? Minions from the movie. Yeah. And they have a wonderful cheer, Mighty Mighty Minions, and they also have these yellow bows that they all wear in their hair when they play that match the jersey, right? It's adorable. They all have their little ponytails and their little yellow bows, and then they get fierce on the field. However, for the championship game, it was made very clear: no bows.
Oh,
we're bringing black war paint. So everybody was putting black under their eyes, right? Like football
forever in Malibu.
Yeah, that's it. Getting pretty intense. It was no bows this time. I'm serious. So it's adorable. I love it.
Hey, you caught a wild card spot though, so that's wicked cool.
Wild card, but so happy for Mark. So really happy. Look, Tim and I have both met Vivian, and I've met like pretty much every woman that Mark has ever dated, and Vivian is amazing. She's really, really terrific, and we are so happy for him, and we want to congratulate him. And if anybody wants to also send their congratulations, you can do so. Gods at DigiGods.com. We will forward everything on.
We'll pass it along. There's a whole great story. Wade wrote a wonderful poem for this because he couldn't be there and Ray couldn't be there. Ray had surgery, so real serious stuff kept these guys away, and I was there to represent. It was a little complicated in this situation. This beautiful poem that Wade wrote that I was going to read, as one does at these things. So this wedding is outside. In Palm Springs at night. It gets cold in the desert at night, folks. Yes, it does. It had gotten quite cold, and there were all these people there for the ceremony that went on for a bit. Beautiful Jewish ceremony, just so beautiful. It was just all wonderful. The Rabbi is a good friend of Mark's, who he grew up with, and she opened with Etta James. At last, she sang Etta James at last. Beautiful voice, killed it. By the way, killed it. All of this. Beautiful ceremony. And then, all the other stuff that happens with the dinner and all this sort of outside is kind of chilly and folks are giving speeches. But there's this contingency of folks there who are from Brazil. Because Mark,
Vivian's family,
her mother, her father, her auntie, several cousins, all of whom speak nothing but Portuguese. And there were these separate. There's this one of them. I think the cousin who spoke English, and she's trying to translate all these speeches to Mark's buddy from high school and give a speech, and she's translating. And look, this is sweet, but it's almost like that joke in that in that movie of The Muse, when the one that kills me every time. It's almost like that. And I'm thinking to myself, I got this 5 stanza. How many stanzas is that poem?
It's like 5. It's like 5 stanzas.
It's like a 5 stanza poem. And I'm looking at this table of all Portuguese people. And I'm thinking, oh Christ. What do you see? A 5 stanza poem. You got the lady trying to translate the Portuguese and everything. I'm like, it's a rhythm. It's a poem. It has a rhythm. And I'm like, okay. I don't think it. And then before I knew it, and I have to add this, the person who actually owned this exquisite home in the desert, this very, very lovely, very, very gay man who's a very, very good friend of Vivian's. Right? Mm-hmm. Very, very gay and very, very good friend of Vivian's and her home. And Mark knows him. He's a wonderful guy. I've met him. He's lovely. And he was married to this other very, very gay man, who used to own that house with him, who's also a very good friend of Vivian's, but they're not anymore. They've been divorced for about like 2 weeks. These guys, but they're both at this wedding and it's like dueling microphones with these guys for how much they love Vivian. I love Vivian. I met Vivian first. No, it was me. It was these guys. I'm like, oh my God. It was funny. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. But it's cold as fuck. These guys are going on. I got the Portuguese family over here, and I'm thinking 5 stanzas. Mark, and I gave him a hug. I said, wait, won't you this beautiful poem? We're going to put it in a golden frame. And you, sir, are gonna read it to Vivian. And at some point when you and Vivian read it to Vivian, and Vivian will perhaps read it in translation to her lovely family. And that's how that's gonna go. Because I'm not getting between those two guys.
Oh, that's great.
And it's the whole thing. And of course, when you talk to Mark, he'll tell you all about it.
It's funny because you just mentioned all of this stuff from the wedding, and it was in Palm Springs. And my head immediately went to the Andy Samberg film, Palm Springs, and that wedding.
And that wedding. We not quite there. But it was wonderful. It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. But my sister happened to be in town, and she was with me, and she just thought it was all
Aren't you glad you woke up this morning and you weren't back at the wedding?
Oh my God. Oh my God. And Palm Springs is only a couple hours drive from where we live in LA. But, we made it a day trip to go there, go back because my sister had to go back. So anyway, that's what happened at the wedding. Beautiful wedding. Mark is married. First marriage. And it is just a wonderful thing.
Fantastic. Very happy for him.
Dude, terrible situation with Jay.
Oh my gosh, Jay Leno, literally as of, I don't know, an hour ago before we recorded this, Jay Leno, it was announced that over the weekend he was burned severely when a car exploded into flames in his garage. And that's all we know. We know that the left side of his face was burned. And we know that it did not hit his eye or his ear. That's the good news. It didn't penetrate the eye or the ear, because that could have been horrible. So we don't know. But he's being treated at the burn center. It's not critical or anything like that. But it's serious. So
suffers serious
burns are.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
Jay, a big car guy, of course.
Big car guy. But when we talk about Jay's garage, if you've seen the show, Jay Leno's Garage, you understand that it's the word garage is used very symbolically and loosely. That Jay Leno's garage is basically a gigantic warehouse in the San Fernando Valley.
It's a bit of a complex. It's with lots and lots of cars from all kinds of eras. It'll be interesting to see what happened. But I won't cast any aspersions right now. You and I were talking about it before the show, but we'll see what the
and nobody of note has died. But Dave Chappelle went on SNL for the first time ever, and man, it's like Dave just knows how to poke. He knows how to poke the bear. I honestly, I thought that monologue was. I mean, here's what I took away from the show, and I haven't watched the show in I've watched it very sparingly since my daughter was born. I've watched it almost not at all in like the last 6 years or so. It's just,
Well, I'm like you. I watch SNL in snippets on YouTube.
Yes,
now,
exactly.
I really never watch it as it's actually happening.
All my favorite cast members basically left. Anyone I wanted to follow was basically gone. Kate McKinnon gone. And Kristen Wiig gone. It just doesn't. It's not interesting to me, and I don't really much care for most of the new cast. It just feels like the writing and the cast, everything's gone stale. And what's his face, the creator producer of the Lorne Michaels, hasn't. It feels like he's getting on in age and isn't really that.
It's because he's almost 80. That might be why, or 70 anyway.
We don't. And plus the pipeline that used to funnel those stars into big movie careers has kind of gone dry. I mean, if you think about it, since Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig, it's not really, nobody's able to make much out of their celebrity on that show.
Certainly you can take it into a different world of celebrity that didn't used to exist before, because the podcast and this and that and television and all that kind of stuff. But the old school Eddie Murphy style Saturday Night Live movie star, and
we can trace them. I mean, it goes from Chevy Chase and Bill Murray and Steve Martin all the way on to, and Steve Martin only ever hosted. He was never part of the cast, but he's associated with the show. And Chevy Chase, obviously, huge, and Bill Murray.
I think was Richard a legit? And Richard used to be on the show all the time. You're talking early days, early 70s, middle 70s now. But I don't know, was he ever a legit cast member?
No, Pryor is associated with the show in the same way Steve Martin is associated with the show, which is as a relevant comic figure who was sort of rubbed elbows with it. Maybe is a better way to put. And then, of course, Eddie Murphy blew the doors off. That just became the biggest star that a show ever produced. And then you follow that up with Will Ferrell and a few others, and Kristen Wiig, who've all had really good careers. But it just doesn't feed the movie career anymore like it used to. Some of them who tried didn't quite pull it off. Chris Kattan couldn't quite pull off the film career. Andy Samberg has done okay. Adam Sandler, of course, had a giant career. Chris Farley had a giant career. Andy Samberg kind of, he sort of came like Pete Davidson did. He came out of there at a time when that was downsizing, and he's wound up in mostly an indie direction, which seems to be where they're all funneling now. TV or indie.
TV or indie, exactly. Or even those niche-y or so. Hey, Lauren, 77. I was kidding when I said he was almost 80. And I didn't even know that I wasn't kidding.
So then let's talk about Dave Chappelle's monologue, which everyone thought he's going to come out. He's going to be trans jokes galore. And you know what? He didn't go there. Instead, he went to Kanye and anti-Semitism.
Yell
mad at him.
New stuff to talk about. And this is what I will say again, the same thing that I said after the whole little trans thing that went down. And is that, this notion of cancelization, we just got to stop at that. First of all, it doesn't exist. I'll say it again. It doesn't exist. Dave is doing fine. If little groups of people want to get mad at Dave every time Dave says something that, bugs them, rubs them the wrong way, whatever, they're really just blowing into the wind and making themselves look silly. And generally speaking, this is also what's true, particularly with respect to Dave. Not everybody. Some people say really obnoxious things. Generally speaking, what they're getting mad about, there is nothing there to be mad about. They're having to find something to be mad about. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to be mad about. Our buddy Mark Jewish, me a little bit Jewish. There's nothing to be mad about. My buddy my good buddy, Neil Cohen, a TV writer way back. I hit Neil up, and Neil's like, have you watched it? This is hysterical. Neil Jewish, 70 years old, wrote for 24, a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, look, that means that anyone who's upset about this is a bunch of Jews I'm talking about too now, old Jews, young Jews, middle-aged Jews, black Jews. None of us are upset about anything we heard on this show. So that means that if you're upset about something you heard on the show, you've had to decide to be upset about something that you've heard on the show. It's a decision that you've made. And I guess that's okay. Knock yourself out with that. But that shit was just funny. And me and a whole bunch of other Jews find it real funny. There you go.
I recommend that people go and watch the monologue. I will not quote any of it because I can't possibly do it justice. I mean, I was just saying to somebody prior to this that, because I love the history of stand-up comedy. Like, this. I am deeply, deeply passionate about the history of stand-up comedy because it's a very American art form. It's a very American art form. And its history is really fascinating. And it has sort of two great strains that come up in the 1950s, which is, Jewish Catskillian comedy and then the black inner city club comedy. And they both come out of these histories of oppression at a moment when television is coming of age. And you can trace the black comics back to the Chitlin circuit. You can trace the Jewish comics through the Catskills back to vaudeville. And all of that kind of comes of age in the 1950s when television has live shows that need talent. And who is better positioned than anybody else? Jewish and black comics. And that's how you get Dick Gregory. And that's how you get
Lenny
Bruce. And that's how
Mort Saul. And
that's how you get Mort Saul. And that's how you get Godfrey Cambridge and Red Fox and Bill Cosby and Jerry Lewis and
Richard,
Alan
of course.
King. And all of these, all these guys come up at that time and in that moment. And it's about 1958, 59. And then, by the late 60s, they're all making movies and TV shows, and it's a different world. And, that whole history to me is so, so fascinating. And, out of all of that, the king of timing has always been Jack Benny. Jack Benny is the guy. Comic timing is an art. You got to know how long to stretch that silence before you drop the comedy, because there's a moment during which an audience anticipates, and you have to sort of hit it at not too soon, not too late. And Jack Benny was a guy who could stretch those silences out almost to the breaking point before he just hit you with something that made you die. But I'll tell you, nobody has come close to Jack Benny's sense of comic timing since, except for Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle's comic timing it's just instinctually incredible. And if you watch his shows, you will see that it's when and where and how long he pauses and what he does during that pause.
During the pauses involves
rolling
his face.
Eyes.
That whole Jack Benny thing. Jack used to do the thing with the, and he would look over his shoulder. Dave has got all kinds of crap going on his face.
So much going on.
While he's waiting. While he's waiting.
He's an artist. It's a beautiful thing to behold. And, it's always interesting when he hosts SNL or has other TV appearances where there are standards and practices to take into account, like on Chappelle's show. And, he has to tamp it down a little bit. How does he do? And you know what? He nails it. He always nails it. So I thought it was so funny, especially that last sketch, and I'll just go ahead and say it, the Black Heaven sketch.
Oh,
it was absolutely pure genius, and it was clearly something that they would never have done had Dave not come in there and made the suggestion of doing it. But it was so funny.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if one or two of the trans
the writing staff
decided not to participate. Hey, look, man, go do your thing.
Yeah.
Take the week off or write for somebody else. Go do your thing. Because nobody's trying to mess with nobody. But we're going to have a show, and Dave's going to be the host.
I haven't seen the ratings yet, but I think we all know they're through the roof.
Yeah. Look. You know what's funny about all of this as we sort of sort out the political stuff that just went down. We just had the midterms and it's this, that, and the other thing all is going on. I keep pointing out to folks that, as much of a mess as our nation seems to be in terms of our unity. In some ways, we are very, 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 very unified. There are certain things about which we all agree. One of them is, generally speaking, Dave Chappelle is funny as hell. and he's probably going to make somebody or another a little mad. But you know what? You weren't mad last week when he made the other people mad. so just get over yourself.
Carlin made people mad. Lenny Bruce made people mad. Richard Pryor made people mad.
Richard,
it's okay.
And I love all of the people you just mentioned, because all of them really just would not abide by the foolishness.
No,
they just won't participate. they won't. No, I'm not going to participate in any of your foolishness, and I'm going to say what I got to say. Hopefully, it'll be funny. If it's not, I'm going to tell another joke. And we're going to keep plowing that way until whatever. Yeah. So good work on their part. Excuse me for the call.
All right. No, it's all good. Get a drink of water. Let's dip into the DVD and Blu-ray world. Why don't we start with Criterion?
Oh, wicked! Because I see Malcolm X there.
Oh my gosh, yes. The big beautiful Criterion of the week is Spike Lee's Malcolm X in a 4K custom Blu-ray 4K combo set. Which I remember remember our old friend Tom Quinn.
Oh yeah,
from the old days, Quinn, and Tom Quinn had a public access show way back when we all wrote for Entertainment Today. And Tom, I remember the year that this came out. That would be 1992.
Yeah.
Gosh, Tim, 30 years ago.
Yeah, man.
And Tom had us as guests on that show. And if memory serves, I think we all talked about our number one film of the year. And I want to say all three of us thought it was Malcolm X.
Yeah.
It was I remember.
I literally have who were we writing for? I guess it would have been Entertainment Today. I literally have the clipping from 92 on the wall with Malcolm X at the top of it. It's one of the few that I've kept over the years. Wow.
I still think this is, and I know, like, for example, we talked about Ray earlier. Ray has some problems with the film, which he feels it's the same problem that he has with Gandhi. Ray always wants a biopic to be a little bit, grungier than they are. But you know what? They're documentaries. I still think this is for my money, probably Spike Lee's best film. I think it's absolutely tremendous. It recreates the period perfectly. Denzel could not be better cast, and the 4K is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. The audio is fantastic, and there are wonderful extras on here, just gobs and gobs of extras. There's an audio commentary originally recorded in 2005 with Spike Lee, Ernest Dickerson, and Barry Alexander Brown, the editor, along with Ruth Carter, his Oscar-winning costume designer. And there are new interviews with Delroy Lindo, Terrence Blanchard, who, of course, wrote the score, the amazing score. There's a making of featurette here. There's another feature-length documentary that's narrated by James Earl Jones, deleted scenes. I mean, there's just a ton here. You could spend half the day watching the movie, which is already long. It's, over 3 hours long. It's about 3 and a quarter. And you could then just watch about 3 or 4 more hours of extras and not get tired of it. I think this is a tremendous film. This is my pick of HD 4K Blu-ray, 4K UHD Blu-ray of the week. This is it. Malcolm X, tremendous from Criterion, unbelievable.
Yeah, wow. The features. Anything in particular? Spike on there? Commentary?
Spike's all over. I mean, featurettes, interviews, documentaries. The commentary. He's all over this thing. He's all over it. I'm glad Barry Alexander Brown's on here too, because he's edited most of Spike's films. He's a really cool guy. He directed one little indie film in the early 90s. I interviewed him for that at the time. And I wish he'd gone on to do more directing work, because I think he's got some real chops. But
he had a decent doc a couple of 3, 4, 5 years ago.
That's right,
too.
He did.
That I remember. I see that Infernal Affairs trilogy.
Yeah, that is also out this week. This is also a really big deal. It's not 4K. That's my only beef with this, but it is this is the Infernal Affairs trilogy by Andrew Lau and Alan Mack is legendary. So everybody probably already knows. If you don't, you should. That this is the basis of The Departed, which won Best Picture, the Scorsese film. but The Departed is not even close to this trilogy. This trilogy is unbelievable, and and what it does, especially in the third film, which is like this Rashomon kind of revisiting of the story from a different point of view. It's really amazing. Everything about these three films is sort of mind blowing, and they just you got to see them all. They're really, really impressive. So anyway, this is a new 4K restoration, but it's on Blu-ray, so it's 4K down, taken down to HD. Great DTS audio and some very, very cool extras on here. Archival interviews with everybody, with the directors and with the actors. And there's all kinds of making of stuff, behind the scenes footage, deleted scenes, outtakes, all that stuff is on here. It's just really, really great. But the one thing I really, really want to give a great shout out to is this beautiful, beautiful essay by our LAFCA colleague, Justin. Justin Chang of the LA Times does the essay here. They really doll it up beautifully. And it's just a perfect essay. It is a perfect appreciation for this trilogy of films and outlines exactly why they are so important. So I would say if you're going to do anything, read Justin's essay first, then watch the movies. Set aside a good half day, watch these movies, then watch Malcolm X.
There is a Infernal Affairs podcast.
Is there really?
Yeah, I think it's called, and people can look at it, Trilogy Infernal Affairs. Something like that, or you like that, but it's a podcast, and all they talk about are those movies. These two guys, that's all they talk about.
There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
there's some really great movies. I mean, it's sort of one of the all-time great, cop and crime sagas. It's just tremendous. I mean, it's really, really great. The third monster Criterion this week is kind of historic. It's Andrew Stanton's Pixar classic WALL-E. Which the LA Film Critics shockingly in 2008 gave Best Picture of the Year. I remember being in that meeting, and everybody kind of looked at everybody at the end. We're like, did we just give WALL-E Best Picture? Like, we were all okay with it, but I don't think anybody even thought it would happen. It just came out of the blue.
Yeah.
But WALL-E is a beautiful film. I like the first part of it more than the last part, but I've grown to appreciate the last part more. Anyway, it's WALL-E's a beautiful film. The little
how did it hit Hero? How does it hit Hero?
Hero likes it, but she hasn't watched it since she was probably 4 or 5, and it's been a number of years. So we may want to watch it again and see how it plays.
It's not a thing. The documentary Goodnight Oppie is sort of making the rounds of right now. It's a wonderful documentary about Opportunity, Spirit, and Opportunity. The two rovers went to Mars, and Opportunity lasted 15 years. And of course, when you look at Opportunity, and then you look at WALL-E, you're like, okay, wait a minute. Here and there's a dynamic that's there, and it's funny though. But in watching that doc, it made me pop WALL-E in and look at that, and I'm like, interesting how, because me, I don't care for the anthropomorphization of pretty much anything. But nevertheless, both of those, this film and Goodnight Oppie, they both get me.
Well, what's interesting to me about this is that this is Disney, and Disney Pixar have never released anything through Criterion ever. At least not in like the last, certainly not in 4K. But I'm trying to go back. I'm thinking, was there ever anything early days of, Criterion and Blu-ray that they may have? And I don't think there was. I think this is certainly in this generation of Disney. This is a first. So I don't know if this is the first of more to come, but it is fascinating that they would license this to Criterion, and it's loaded. This is so loaded. The Pixar Story, the 2007 documentary, is on here, and then there are just, there's like a dozen and a half other featurettes and documentaries about everything and interviews. It's just on and on and on. It really gets very detailed, and you find out all kinds of fascinating intricacies of how the film was conceptualized and planned and executed, and it's really beautiful. You learn how Pixar works. And the 4K is, stunning, as you would expect. The last 3 Criterions, so one is, funny that this gets minimized this week, is also a 4K. It's 4K of Jane Campion's Oscar-winning Power of the Dog. She won Best Director last year for this. So that's now out on a Criterion Blu-ray, also loaded with great extras, behind-the-scenes footage, interview. You talk to Campion, talk to her DP, Kirsten Dunst. It's all really interesting. Your appreciation of the film will probably increase having watched this. So that is really, really beautiful. And then we also have Daisies, which is the utterly compelling, powerful, fascinating 1966 Czech New Wave masterpiece, which has been out before in DVD. It's now out in Blu-ray. If you're a fan of the Czech New Wave, you definitely got to see this. It's not loaded with extras. It's got a documentary on it, and a couple of short films and not much else. But it's a pretty great film. It's kind of very archetypical of the Czech New Wave, but it's sort of like the cream of the crop. It really is. It's a beautiful film, and very, very prescient in many ways relative to what's happening today. And then Wong Kar-wai, In the Mood for Love, which has previously been released in the big Wong Kar-wai box set, and I'm sure everyone's going to be really, really upset to find out that it is now out in a solo 4K release. That's going to force some people to make some difficult choices, but I'm sorry, you just got to live a little. In the Mood for Love, pure poetry, also available on tap on the Criterion channel, but it is one of the most beautifully photographed films of the last 20 or 30 years. And I can't believe it's 22 years old now. That really makes me depressed. But it's a beautiful film and fantastic Christopher Doyle cinematography. And there it is. It's out in a 4K.
Fantastic, man. Where are we going?
Let's go to the regular 4Ks. Shall we start?
Paths of Glory. Is that a part of the regular 4Ks? That
yes,
Paths of Glory.
So
is that the new one that's in theaters now, or the
So the 4K releases from Kino, they've got the trilogy of early Kubrick films on 4K. These are the Kubrick Harris, the early Kubrick Harris films that really kind of launched his career pre-Lolita, pre-Spartacus. And they are all very, very solid in 4K. They don't have a ton of extras, to be honest. There are some commentaries on here. Different commentary each time. Tim Lucas does a very solid commentary for Paths of Glory. It's solid. It's not brilliant. Some brilliant commentaries coming up later. I'm going to make mention of really brilliant. But The Killing has a commentary. Tim knows what I'm talking about. The Killing has a commentary by Alan K. Rode, which is very good. Really gets into a lot of the nitty gritty of the story and the Jim Thompson origin and all that kind of stuff. And then Imogen Sarah Smith does the commentary for Killer's Kiss. So that's Killer's Kiss, The Killing, and Paths of Glory. Killer's Kiss is still a pretty raw film, honestly. It's 1955. It's sort of Kubrick's first real feature. It was after Fear and Desire, after
I always loved Frank Silva.
Right?
He's scary. He's just scary.
Killer's Kiss and The Killing in particular are really, really interesting. It's, there's a lot of James B. Harris in these things. That brings me to something too. And let me just mention Paths of Glory, which is a beautiful film, but still more a Kirk Douglas movie than a Kubrick movie. It's kind of their predecessor to Spartacus. But, there was a documentary on James B. Harris that was being put together by our good friend FX Feeney when FX Feeney passed. And we really should look into what happened to that film and see where it is and where the elements are and how far they got. Because, FX knew Harris and had worked quite a while on making that happen. And that would be a real tragedy if that just kind of fell apart and never saw the light of day. So we might want to raise that question with the group. Anyway, wonderful trio of classic Blu-rays there. Tim, let's talk about Nope for a second. The third Jordan Peele film.
A little. People are a little bit more split about that film than Get Out and Us. I happen to like it quite a lot. There's a whole lot of references inside Nope to many interesting things. Some of them sort of related to the Black community, but some of them just sort of like deep knowledge horror movie stuff. And TV horror stuff. And if you sort of like get all that, it makes it a more interesting film. I particularly love Kiki Palmer's performance, the sassy little sister. to that very laconic Daniel Kaluuya. Yeah. So I still like this film quite a lot. Beautifully designed film. What's on that? What do you got there? 4K?
So it's got making of stuff on it, and it's got an hour long behind the scenes kind of doc featurette, whatever you want to call it. An hour, it's kind of in between the two, and deleted scenes and gag stuff. So it's not overly loaded with extras. It's a beautiful transfer though, and one of the things that when I saw this, so there, you watch this in a streaming format, it's really done a disservice. We've recently been sent a streaming, and I would say even the Movies Anywhere version of this film. This is best seen, absolutely best seen for all of the night stuff in 4K with the disc. Like pop the disc in, because the blacks are so crisp. And yeah, they're CGI blacks in many cases, the way, there's a lot of CG and visual effects in this thing. So, it's hard to know exactly where one leaves off, but the nighttime stuff that requires use of shadows and darks really needs to have a 4K TV and a 4K Blu-ray to because otherwise everything gets crushed and chalky and you can't really see the detail. And you sort of need to see the detail in those scenes because there's all kinds of neat little things that sort of peek out and do things. So that's why I think that if you didn't see it in a theater, you have to get the 4K disc. Otherwise, you're going to miss all kinds of stuff. But the story, we should say, is rather interesting. It's about a brother and sister, Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer, who run a ranch for movie horses. These are horses.
Yeah, they horse wranglers. Yeah.
And they are descended from, in the narrative of the film, the jockey who rode the horse in the very first piece of film ever filmed, right? The famous
name, Mulridge,
the Edward Muybridge film, and the guy who rode the horse in that, very very successful black jockey of the era. So the idea is that they are his descendants, and they're sort of carrying on the tradition, and so that part of it is interesting, and then there's like an old timey TV story which deals with Stephen Yeun, who's used to be a TV star and now he runs a weird kind of
when he was a little boy. And that series took place in the 80s or 90s?
It would be like the 90s, I think.
90s, because he was a little boy when the series happened.
But the thing is, there's like there's a whole kind of extraterrestrial thing happening, which everybody should know by now. And then there's the Stephen Yeun thing with the chimp. And then there's the family thing. And I never quite felt like those three things kind of got into the same orbit. They sort of, the movie ended and I didn't feel the satisfaction that I felt with the two previous films where I was like, all right, now it all came together. And
I can understand that. Yeah.
I'm not sure it was meant to.
I don't think it was meant to. They overlap in character, and even within some of the narratives, they sort of overlap. There's a thing that he's talking about that has to do with outsiders, which is sort of relevant to Kaluuya and Keke, and relevant to Stephen Yeun and his characters, and but they mostly only overlap in character.
Yeah.
But not so much in that way of where, this is what's going on.
Yes. Exactly.
Sort of thing. And I get it. It can leave you a little loose there. But generally speaking, for me, I was so satisfied by those little nods too. Yeah. Hey, did you knows? Jordan does a whole lot of did you knows inside his movies.
Yeah.
And those are sort of satisfying to me. I really
I will say those are very satisfying. Yeah. And then we got the movie of the year so far, more or less, Top Gun Maverick. Tom Cruise here nearly 40 years after the original, and it's his biggest film of all time. I don't know that kind of a phenomenon has ever happened before. He is, in fact, our last movie star. Top Gun Maverick. I didn't like the original Top Gun when I saw it. I've gotten older and I maybe less critical, but I really had a blast with this movie. I had so much fun with it. It's just, basically the same movie as before, except he's older. He's still Maverick. He's got all kinds of problems with authority like he always did. And Val Kilmer's moved on to become, an admiral, and Tom Cruise is still, punky kid. And he's still, now he has to lead this group of new kids to go fight this new potential nuclear threat in some kind of North Koreanistan, Russia. It's not quite clear who it is it?
Yeah, it doesn't really make any difference, does it? No. It's just so.
Could be Switzerland for all we know.
Look, it's thoroughly enjoyable for sure. Beautifully done. Shot Joe Kosinski. And a lot of leftover story stuff from Jack Epps Jr., who I think is not with us anymore, and Jim Cash and those guys. But and a great cast. Jennifer Connelly, sexy as hell. Miles Teller, sexy as hell. And it's not like, a lot of times these movies, the one I'll give you is that Independence Day. That's the Independence Day sequel they made, where they're trying to leave the original characters behind. Will is dead, I think. Yeah. And I think Tyra Banks. So this movie is not trying to leave anybody behind. This movie is bringing everybody who was in that other movie that you loved with us. And they're all still badasses. And now we got a whole bunch of new badasses, but they're not replacing our other badasses because that would have pissed me off. I mean, guys like me and you, that would have pissed me off. This guy, but no, they're like, no, everybody's still hot and sexy, baby. and we're making a new movie. And I love that about this film.
It is loaded with extras too. 80 minutes of stuff behind the scenes, just over and over and over. It's just really great, really fascinating. And it's fun because they understand that, it's all about sort of enhancing the movie. E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, out in a standalone 40th anniversary with edition, 4K, UHD, all kinds of new special features. Nothing really that requires upgrading. E.T.'s been out before in 4K, so this kind of you don't need to double dip here.
We can't talk about E.T. without mentioning the Fabelmans.
Yes,
we won't ruin it or nothing. But
have you seen the Fabelmans?
Oh yeah,
that's right. We talked a little bit about this. We didn't get into detail. I think we both. Everyone else is going nuts about it.
Oh man. I think
you and I have some reservations.
Well, the title is extremely appropriate. This is a fable, and that's okay because but at this exact moment though, James Gray has a film out called Armageddon Time.
Yeah.
Which is also, more or less, The Fabelmans is sort of loosely the Steven Spielberg. This was the life that I had that led me to becoming Steven Spielberg's story, mostly, kind of, sort of, thus Fabelmans. But James Gray's movie, Armageddon Time, is a film that I like far and away better because I think it's a far and away more honest film. I think it's James.
It's not a personal celebration. Like Spielberg recently lost his parents, both of them, in past however many years, and so this is very much a sort of a personal celebration, a personal memoir. James isn't putting himself up on a billboard. James is saying something from there are things that happened in my past in the 1980s as growing up that I think are worth addressing. So it's not about him. He is in the middle of it, but what he is in the middle of is more important than him. Whereas in the Fabelmans, what he is in the middle of is in fact him.
Yeah, the making of a myth, and maybe therein lies the difference. James is not a myth, but he's so. I look at these two films, and all I know is I came away from Armageddon Time infinitely more satisfied and feeling like somebody had told me a true story, a true-ish story. I come away from the Fabelmans, and I feel like I absolutely believe that events here happened and are true, but I still feel like I haven't been told a true story. I feel like I haven't been told a true story when I come away from the Fable. That's the way I would sum it up.
And what's weird about this is that I am not right now flashing back to a particular day in about 1990 when I was on the set. 1990? It would have been about 1990, yeah. When I was on the set of Matt Reeves' thesis film at USC, talking to James about the Steven Spielberg biography that I had just read. And it's very weird now seeing these two films because I know a lot of these stories from James's past, right? We've talked about it. And of course, I know a lot of the stories from Spielberg's life because they're in those bios. But it's very weird thinking back to that moment, and now these two films. Very strange.
We're talking about E.T., of course.
Yes.
But I got to tell you, this film, E.T., the DVD you're working with there, the 4K, and Close Encounters, and Catch Me If You Can, and to me, those films collectively, and I think I'm leaving something out, I believe have informed me more about Steven Spielberg than the Fabelmans. I know way more about Steven from having seen those films. I'm leaving something out than I feel like you're going to get about him from the Fabelmans, which I think is just sort of ironic, considering that's supposed to be sort of, semi-autobiographical.
Let me transition then. What does 3,000 Years of Longing tell you about George Miller?
Yeah, man. Look, absolutely nothing really. This film, it's adapted for one thing from that A.S. Byatt thing, and so maybe that's what it is. It's not George Miller writing, like when he's writing.
It's a short story.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's adapted from a short story, but I'm not quite I've not read the short story.
No,
and I feel like having seen this, I still don't know what the short story is about. This movie's kind of all over the place. I mean, it's it's Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. Tilda Swinton is she's in Istanbul, and Idris Elba is a genie, and gives her 3 wishes, and I mean, there's a whole. If you think all right, she's a woman and his genie and 3 wishes, and that's sort of a traditional thing, and then it goes into all kinds of different directions that I didn't see coming, and I'm not sure I like them. It's dazzling to look at. I just don't quite think I understand it, to be honest. Might need to watch it again. Sometimes I think George Miller just reads things and says, I'll bet that sounds like a great challenge at this stage in my career. Let's see if I can make that real.
Yeah,
that's what this feels like.
It's exhilarating to watch, but again, I feel like as opposed to any of the the Mad Maxy sort of stuff, where he is building that narrative from the ground up, there's this connective tissue, through line connective tissue with it all. This has just a framework that already exists, this sort of a Jen story, and I just don't feel like it's going anywhere or has any sort of direction that's his. This is the story I'm going to tell. I don't know. That's the way it's looks like.
And then we got Brad Pitt in Bullet Train, 4K UHD, which Mark saw before I saw it. And I said, well, what'd you think? Because I was kind of looking forward to it because it looked like my kind of movie. And Mark said he called it the worst Quentin Tarantino movie never made.
It's exhausting, this movie.
The worst movie that Quentin Tarantino never made. It's exhausting. Why?
There's all kinds of things going on. There's on a train. There are assassins. We move between, all kinds of things going on. It's nonstop. Everybody is quipping and quirping and all that kind of stuff, including Brad in this movie. And it all adds up to absolutely nothing. It literally is just that on a train. There's a narrative, but who cares? It's just a bit piece and set piece to bit piece and set piece. Somebody says something funny, fight, moving on. And we do it again.
And then we got a very strange DC animated movie on 4K. Respectable, but still strange. It is Batman and Superman Battle of the Super Sons. And this is 11-year-old Jonathan Kent and Damian Wayne in this very curious story about the sons of Batman and Superman, and they have to somehow team up to save the day, and there's this alien, and it's it feels like something that should probably have been, I don't know, like a Saturday morning series in 1983. It just doesn't. I don't know. It's maybe I'm too old to even enter this world, but just from a premise standpoint, it didn't quite go there for me. Also on 4K is a Best Buy exclusive steelbook of Punisher Warzone. I also not really my speed. I think the reason this is a Best Buy exclusive is because they know their audience and they know the people who go kind of troll the halls at Best Buy are more likely to get this than anybody who is marketed directly to online.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Good cast: Ray Stevenson, Dominic West, Julie Benz.
Yeah,
but where does this live in the Punisher universe? I mean, because there's the Punisher.
I lost track. I mean, I've kind of lost track of where the Punisher has been going because there's been animated Punisher and live action Punisher and the Punisher TV series. It was part of the whole.
That whole thing
Daredevil,
with Luke Cage and Jessica.
Right, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones universe, and then. You had the Scott Glenn Punisher at one point, and then you had the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, and I've just completely lost track. There's just too much Punisher.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess for fans. Then the last 4K that we've got here, at least non-television related 4K, is from Blue Underground. This is the first ever 4K Ultra HD from Blue Underground. It is Henry Miller's Quiet Days in Clichy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to assume that most people have probably never heard of this, but this is one of those 4Ks that comes out and you go, well, good on them. That's pretty great. So this is a scandalous film from that period in kind of the late 60s and early 70s, which coincides with things like I Am Curious Yellow and when the censorship regime was really falling apart and everything and anything could go in movies, and you had Midnight Cowboy getting rated X and winning Best Picture, and it was a scandalous moment. And Henry Miller, of course, rather notorious figure.
Yeah,
Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, all that stuff.
The wonderful subject of Henry and June, of course.
Yes.
Whose film? Philip Kaufman's film. A couple of years. About 1990, I think.
About 1990.
Yeah.
Gosh, well, Henry Miller wrote the novel that Quiet Days in Clichy is based on, and so this is based on that, and it's still a pretty scandalous novel, and they made a movie of it, and in 1970, the only prints were seized by the U.S. government because for the same reason they seized the prints of I Am Curious Yellow. It violates obscenity laws and so forth and so on, and of course, in the end, the courts, said that's all bogus, and both movies were able to be released along with a lot of others. But nonetheless, it sort of disappeared from the conversation around that time. So it's back again, directed by Jens Jørgen Thorsen. It's like I'm Curious Yellow. The Swedes were the ones who were breaking all this stuff down. Thorsen, not really a significant filmmaker independent of this film, but it has some great songs by Country Joe McDonald, who is interviewed on here, and it's really good stuff. So, you got deleted scenes. You got a Blu-ray on here, the second Blu-ray disc that has all the extras on it, interviews, and all this kind of deleted scenes and the original trailer and all that kind of stuff. But, as a snapshot of, sort of bohemian life in that late 60s, early 70s moment, set in against Paris, this beautiful Parisian backdrop and all of this debauched lifestyle that's going on. It's really, really a fascinating snapshot in time, beautifully photographed, incredible just crystallization of a moment in a culture and snapshot in time. And Blue Underground has done us a real service by digging this up and saying, we're going to put this on 4K. And so Quiet Days in Clichy is quite an archival gem. Let's see. We could do new films. We could get to some archival stuff. We could do TV.
Let's do a little TV.
All right.
I'll scroll down. I've been sort of keeping up a little bit.
Could I ask you first off?
Stuff.
Tim Cogshell.
Yeah.
The Flash, the complete 8th season. On Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I've fallen out of love.
Well, the narrative stuff, the character stuff, the sort of the through line stuff for the Flash has gotten really wacky and enforced and just all of that. I can say, I watched the Flash for the sort of family dynamic stuff, and this is what they did manage to do in that season. is they managed to drag every incarnation of the Flash family dynamic, his dead mother Nora, who comes back because she's the Flash something.
She's one of the
time forces, one of the time forces. And they get the old Flash, Kelly, the guy with the helmet, and they get the other Flash, and they figured out how to bring Thawne back into. I'm like, okay, so we're just gonna drag everybody all back to the show.
Both Thawnes.
Both Thawnes,
They both come back.
And I'm like, so as I'm watching that season, that season, that's what I'm mostly enjoying. Because, for me, the Flash was always, look, whatever's with the stuff that's going on. I just love the Flash.
Barry and Iris. It's still Barry and Iris.
It's Barry and Iris and Dad and their kids that they haven't had yet, but are still 25 years old.
It's like, I keep thinking every time those kids come back with some new problem from the future, if I'm Barry and Iris, I'm looking at each other, we're like, we just, let's just not have them.
If we didn't have these kids,
if we just decided to not have children, like right now,
we wouldn't have any of these
will go away.
Because I keep thinking that too. I'm like, if we can fix this, kids, Mom, if we screw things up in the future, God damn it! What the hell is wrong with you kids? What did we do wrong? Anyway, but I know you're not so nutty about the last season or two of The Flash. Well,
it's. It was a struggle for me to get through this season. I got through every episode as I have the previous, but it's more like a milestone now. I'm like, all right, I've never missed an episode of The Flash. I'm going to keep watching these damn things, no matter how bad they get. If it goes to 20 seasons, I am going to suffer through this damn thing. And it kind of was all over the map. I feel like the writers don't really care. But I keep hoping, and I also think they keep adding too many cast members. I got to be honest, the Team Flash just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which is one thing if it's all Team Flash, but the problem is everybody on it is a meta now.
Yeah.
They pretty much. I mean, like Joe, right? Joe's the only one who's not a meta. Like his wife's a meta and his daughter's a meta. I mean,
Anyway. That was all. You're right. It's all too much. Of course,
it's too much. But anyway, there it is. It's out there. It's on Blu-ray. Knock yourselves out. Wal-Mart exclusive. That 70s show. Complete series from Mill Creek. How do you think this ages, Tim?
That's a good question. That 70s show ages fairly well for me because I watched it during its run. I think it started in about 98 or so. And, I watched it most of the way through that run. And for me, it was extremely nostalgic, sort of completely. So for me, when I watched that 70s show, it's like I'm watching the show from the 70s. I don't even connect it to 1998 to 2006. Right. It's like but there it is. A show that's nigh on, close to 20 years old, season one of that show. What do you think? Is it something you can pop in?
I was never a huge fan of it originally. I kind of grew to appreciate it in concept more than execution. I could tune in and go, all right, I kind of get what they're going for, but I'm not going to ever really watch a full episode. So I will return to it whenever we get stuff in. I'll be like, oh, okay, let's take a look, see if I still feel the same way, and I kind of do. But it's not my speed, it's not my kind of comedy, but I understand the audience it's made for. So I try to be fair about that. It's not that it's bad. It's just not my thing.
You know what it is. The character I like, none of those kids. I watched that show for Kurtwood Smith.
I agree.
He played the dad. Him and his wife. He lived next door to me. That guy, and I loved him. He was wonderful. He was good. And me and him would talk because he's like, I wish because his son, my good friend Roy Lee, who was the same age as me. But Roy Lee was, a different kind of kid, and Kurt would literally say to me, I wish you were my kid. My kid's stupid. And I'd be like, yo, man, you can't say shit like that. What am I supposed to say to that?
And I am a Kurtwood Smith fan. I mean, from the time I first really became aware of him in Dead Poet Society, where he plays the dad, right?
Oh yeah,
he just beautiful performance there, and then he just switches at 180 degrees to become basically this horrible, vicious, sadistic gangster kingpin in RoboCop. And I thought, all right, now I'm going to pay attention to this guy.
I love Kurtwood.
He's for real. Kurtwood Smith, absolutely terrific character actor. Let's talk about for a second seasons 1 and 2 on Blu-ray of Evil.
Oh yeah,
which I think is becoming a very, very interesting show.
yeah, Mike Coulter there.
Mike Coulter
Did they move? Did they do something like move networks or something? What did they do with that show? It seems like that show was originally on ABC, and now it's over at Paramount Plus or something.
So it's a CBS show.
CBS show, okay.
It was originally CBS. They may have moved it to Paramount Plus. That might be that it moved from CBS to Paramount Plus, which they're doing with a few things. But what I really like about this is, Mike Coulter kind of kills it on this, and you see what they weren't really letting him do in Luke Cage. He's able to do here. I mean, he's got a lot of layers to him as an actor. And it's really, really quite interesting.
The reason I asked that question is because I notice. Because this is the most recent season, right?
And this is I noticed one and two on Blu-ray. They're out
1 and 2.
Right about, 1 and 2.
Because season 2 is like sexier, like a little more sweaty, and sticky, and the language is a little bit different. That's the reason why I think that move may have made a difference. Everything got a little more grown up.
And so everyone understands this is kind of a very religiously based series about the occult. It's a little bit like The Exorcist meets the Da Vinci Code meets Bones. Does that sound halfway decent? It's kind of it's sort of a cross between all those things, but very nuanced and some very, very interesting stuff here. And it doesn't get as exploitative as you might think that it would.
I like it better than those American Horror Stories.
I do too.
There are a lot of those, of course, but only a couple of these. But in terms of living in that spot, I like it better than the American Horror Stories, which are just sort of gory and chop. And this is much more. The first season of this, the notion that it's working with is whether or not any of this is real.
Yeah.
And in the second season, it was real. But what are we going to do about it?
It's an interesting pairing, because Coulter plays a guy who's working to become a priest, working to get ordained, and he's teamed up with this psychologist played by Katja Herbers, who I've never heard of before, who's amazing, who's just amazing. It gets really amazing in season 2. It's a really, really interesting dynamic between those two, and they're both very interesting, kind of tormented characters. I think this is a cool show, and I'm eager to see where they take it, and I hope more people kind of find it because it's worth discovering. So that's Evil, seasons 1 and 2 on Blu-ray. Let's see what else. Anything here that's jumping out at you that we should prioritize?
Well, let's see. We Hunt Together. I think is in that stack of stuff you got there. The British series, season 2 of that. I enjoyed season 1. Haven't cracked open season 2, but there are a lot of British performers in that series that I just like a lot, and they pop up in all kinds of stuff. Charlene White and Harmony Cornfield, just Vicky Pepperdine, all these folks. So season 2, what do you think about that? Colin Morgan, who was in He was in a lot of Doctor Who's.
I think this is this is basically from the same people who made Luther, and it's kind of got a similar. It's a little bit darker than Luther, but it kind of lives in the same general procedural world, and serial killers and very intense dark procedural stuff, and just general British procedural. But I like it. I think the writing is smart. I think it's it has kind of a moral nuance that a lot of the American procedurals just don't have, and I always appreciate that. It's almost more, it's less about whether they'll solve the crime and who's guilty than the process, and it's a very interesting process. That's I find very, very compelling. As long as we're talking about British shows, is also the BBC's Shakespeare and Hathaway, Private Investigators. Which is kind of cute and entertaining in a moonlighting, in a Glenn Gordon Caron way, right? Like what he did with Moonlighting and Remington Steele. It's a little bit in the same kind of thing, except with a kind of a Shakespearean kiss to it. It's the Shakespearean undertone to it that makes it sort of fun and very uniquely British, but. Yeah, I mean, maybe Heart to Heart. It's got a little dash of that too.
Yeah, Look, it's cute. It's literally set in Stratford upon Avon.
Avon, yeah.
You know, her name is Lula Shakespeare. His name is Frank Hathaway, and they invested. And there they are, and it's sort of sweet and sort of funny, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's fun. It's
Vicky Pepperdine's in that too. Yeah.
Got some big complete sets here. I'll make quick work of if I could. We've got the complete series of Charmed. This is the new Charmed, not the old Charmed. This is Blu-ray of the new Charmed.
I'm a big fan.
And along the same lines, we have the complete series of the Good Witch, or just Good Witch, the Hallmark series, Good Witch, which ran for 7 seasons when I wasn't looking. It's very strange. Canadian.
That's Catherine Bell, man. Come on, that's where Catherine Bell went after. What was that Navy show she was on?
Yeah, NCIS or whatever.
NCIS. Yeah, the first, like the original NCIS.
You do realize that Catherine Bell was in my friend Norman's Project 2 when we were in film school, which I was first AD on.
I did not know that.
You didn't know that?
No, I don't think I do that. I think I would have remembered that.
So you were at Mark's wedding on Saturday, and did you talk to Zach there?
Zach was there, yeah.
Zach Weintraub? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, the final scene of Norman's film is a sex scene between Zach and Catherine Bell.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I was the first AD. I was the person who was responsible for saying, all right, clear the set.
Well, look, Catherine Bell's lovely right now in Good Witch. Catherine Bell was ridiculously beautiful in that Navy show, you know, that she was on with that boy for NCIS. And I don't even want to know how fine Catherine Bell was in 1980, whatever the hell you're talking about.
It was about 89. It was about 89.
I don't even want to know. Anyway, I'm glad everybody went on to do well.
I don't know how we went sideways on that, but
I do.
Hallmark Channel original series, Good Witch, the complete series on Blu-ray. And you know, it's do I regret not having seen every episode of this? No, not really, but it's fine.
I've seen every episode of it because Catherine Bell is in it, and I'm loyal.
The new Charmed, the complete Charmed. You're much more onto the Charmed bandwagon than I am. How does this compare to the original?
Well, I like it. Because I thoroughly enjoyed the original Charm, 1998, whenever the hell that show was on. I had a lot of fun with it. They've taken this one. It's sort of Latinx in black, but it's not really Latinx in black at all. And it's modern and a little Me Too-y, which I like. That's a good thing so far as I'm concerned. And it's sexy. It's just stupid sexy. So I've enjoyed it quite a lot. What season are we in?
This is the complete series. It's all
the whole series. That's right, because they completed when Lacey left the show. Melanie Diaz and I thoroughly enjoyed the show. It was a lot of fun for me.
I hope they don't reboot it again, though.
Nah, we're good.
We also got a couple of complete series animated shows from Cartoon Network celebrating its 30th anniversary. One is. And I don't get either of these, I'll be honest. You got to be kind of a twisted child to appreciate animation that is just so deranged. But so I don't let my daughter watch either of these. But some strange adults clearly do. One is Ed, and Eddy.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is just really disturbing on a certain level. And then 66 episodes of that. And then the other one, which is equally nightmare-inducing, is Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, the complete series. This is, this 8-year-old kid, and he's got, some very, very tweaked imaginary friends. There's kind of a Monsters, Inc. vibe going a little bit here.
That's from like the early 2000s or something, if I'm not mistaken.
2004 to 2009, this thing ran.
Yeah. Right.
And if I have to pick one, look, Ed, and Eddy, I have no love for whatsoever. It's really a creepy show. This thing ran from about 99 to 2007.
Yeah.
But Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, if you're about 13 or 14, that's probably optimal. You're old enough to not be scarred for life by the artwork here, but you're young enough to probably still enjoy the imagination of it. and to not be totally cynical. So there's a very narrow window where that'll probably work for you. But both of those are out. And then we also got Ray Donovan, complete series of Ray Donovan, 82 episodes from Showtime on DVD, not Blu-ray. But let's talk about Ray Donovan for a second. I mean, this is meant to sort of suggest that this world exists, that there is this underbelly of Hollywood and people like Ray Donovan who work within it. But I mean, how, your experience, how credible can we say that this is?
Oh, this is all just made up. I watched the first a couple of seasons of Ray Donovan. It's just sort of trying to figure out where it was going, and sort of quickly realized that for me, this just didn't speak to any sort of LA that I know anything about. This show didn't even look like it was set in LA. If they weren't literally at the beach in this show, you wouldn't have known it was set in LA at all. So I don't know. That's just the way it always did hit me, which is why I kind of bailed on it. As opposed to, what was that show with Bosch?
Yeah,
which is set in LA.
That's a really interesting comparison. I've never thought of that before, but I think you're right.
Yeah. So anyway, there you go.
We got more Ozzie and Harriet. Now, we talked about Ozzie and the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet seasons 1 and 2, which we covered a few weeks ago. This is seasons 7 and 8. 36 episodes in season 7, 32 episodes in season 8, because back then they just made television like it was nobody's business. I have inquired of MPI, who releases these, as to what happened to seasons 3, 4, 5, and 6, because they just skipped those seasons in these releases. No one got back to me. So
I wonder would they have been shot on what were they using, like kinescope or something like that before they went to 16mm film?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's a question. Is anything lost? Are there copyright issues? Did they fall out of copyright because somebody, dropped the ball? I mean, those are always questions, and it's always
maybe it was a different producing company that got that knocked off the first. Interesting, very interesting.
But it does say authorized by the Nelson estate. So somewhere in there's an explanation I have not been able to get. But just know that in addition to seasons 1 and 2, you can now add 7 and 8. And like the rest of us, you can wonder where, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are and when they will come out. Still, a funny show, not loaded with extras. Good show, solid show, very indicative of its era, but, continues to represent kind of a moment in television and American culture that many people question whether or not it is more idyllic than was the reality.
Yeah, well, of course it was. It's television. You know what I love about this show? If you watch this show, you see a lot of people that will eventually pop up and become a little bit more known to us from later shows. I Love Lucy, Green Acres. If you watch this show, you'll see Frank Cady, who was the guy that ran the general store on Green Acres, and you'll see Mary Jane Croft, who was one of Lucy's friends on I Love Lucy, and Don DeFore, who's going to be the father on Hazel in a couple of years. But they're all sort of roaming around this show and a few shows right before that, before they become the characters that we sort of all know.
So we also have some really interesting Ultraman sets here. Now, Tim, do you know what the difference is between this double feature of Ultraman Z Earth and Ultraman Z Earth 2 on the one hand, the difference between that and Ultraman Neos, and then this third set, which is all the Ultraman Cosmos stuff. It's Ultraman Cosmos First Contact, Ultraman Cosmos 2, The Blue Planet, and then Ultraman Cosmos versus Ultraman Justice. So between Ultraman Cosmos, all these movies, Ultraman Neos, and the Ultraman Z Earth double feature, do you know what the difference is?
I can promise you I do not.
Absolutely nothing.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure like just as I have, like, my friend Richie can look at two different, Pontiacs from 1965 and tell them apart by the shape of their fins. I'm sure there are people who can look at all the different Ultraman costumes and go, well, if you look at the shape of the eyes and the shape of the fin on the head, it's very clearly Ultraman Neos, where, I'm sure there are people who can tell that, but to an untrained eye, I look at this and I'm like, it's all just Ultraman stuff.
It's just Ultraman.
It's just Ultraman. It's all the same, and they're all fighting basically the same villains and the same battles, and I can't really, I can't keep track of it anymore. It's just too much Ultraman. It's like Power Rangers. It's the same stuff.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, if you're Ultraman,
Ranger.
Yeah, it's all the same. Speaking of, it's a little bit sideways from Ultraman, but Halo Season 1. I never played the Halo game. So
Sherm, our buddy Sherm is a big Halo guy, very into all the Halo, and therefore, sort of kept me associated with the Halo world and dynamics, which is sort of generally aliens, big giant aliens trying to kill us in the what, maybe 26th century or something like that.
Yeah,
and these team of elite Marini types in these outfits with special weaponry off into the universe to try to kill them before they can kill us. That's Halo. Yeah.
And this is Season 1. It is very impressively made. High production value. I remember when this thing was announced, it took them forever to get around to it. This has got all kinds. I mean, it's got hours and hours of special features. It's no point in me getting into it. They filmed almost the entire post-production process. It's got, collectible art cards and all kinds of fun stuff here. But I mean, I don't think you have to have been a fan of the game or played the game to sort of get into this world, but it does feel it's very mecha inspired. It's very Dune-esque too. It definitely has kind of a Dune quality to it too. So I'll give it a chance in Season 2. A lot of people love Abbott Elementary.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, let's talk about Abbott Elementary. I kind of decided to give it a shot, and I think it's quite charming and brisk. I think it's very observational and true. Actually, having been an elementary parent now for a number of years, I think they kind of get it. I do. I think they get it.
Well, you know me. I've taught for many years in the inner city elementary schools, both here and in St. Louis. Schools just like that school, which teaches a whole lot like those teachers, particularly young teachers. Years ago I was one of those young teachers, and they get a whole lot very much right about that. Quinta Brunson, star of the show, created the show. Her mother is a teacher, and she herself sort of like just crafted this whole universe around her childhood and her mother and her mother's school and her school and all of that. And it's just all lovely and so funny. And Shirley Ralph just won what did they win on TV? They won Emmys on TV,
Emmy?
right?
She got an Emmy? Yeah.
Yeah, she just won an Emmy for her role there. And it's a very, very funny show. I see why it's as popular as it is. Of course, I love these shows. So I'm a Welcome Back Kotter guy. I'm a one what was the name of the show that had all the high school kids on it? And the teacher was Herman. The teacher was the English teacher guy.
Of the class. Head of
the class. I'm that guy.
Billy Connolly replaced Howard.
Billy Connolly replaced Howard Hesseman. Howard Hesseman and Billy Connolly. I love the guy was that guy. I go all the way back to Room 222 with these shows. They're all more or less the same in one. In one way or another, and I love them all. And this one lives right in that pocket. Good work, I say, Quinta Brunson.
We got three others here from CBS and Paramount. The complete series of Good Sam, which is when they say complete series, in this case they mean that it didn't even run a full season. It's basically a truncated season, and it's a heart surgeon thing. Jason Isaacs kind of tries to make a go of it as a romantic lead. Sophia Bush is very, very lovely in the lead. This whole tandem between the two of them is cute, but it doesn't really ever pan out. I think they pulled too many punches, and I don't know. It's it's like got more promise than I think it was allowed to explore, but it didn't get to explore it. So
hey, look, I'll tell you what's wrong with that show is because they got this whole sort of dynamic going on back and forth. He's too old for her. Jason Isaacs is too old for her, and I did not like the idea of them forming a relationship because he's too old for her. And now Wendy Crewson is also on that show, and that's the dynamic they should have set up.
Yeah,
with him and her, and then the other guy. So so nevertheless,
I mean, it's a missed opportunity either way. I think there were things they could have done with it that they didn't. Grizzly Adams was a thing way back in the day.
Oh,
a few people might remember Dan Haggerty and that show. We got a movie here, The Capture of Grizzly Adams. They kept that thing going for a while. It's fine. It's okay. This was from 1982. It's the only thing Dan Haggerty really ever did of any kind of relevance. And he milked it, and I hope it's paying dividends to this day. I hope the people who buy this, that a good chunk of it goes to Dan Haggerty wherever he is in whatever cabin enjoying his retirement.
What I remember about this movie from 1982 TV is did Kim Darby and Noah Berry Jr. That's what I have, these real old school sort of, yeah.
Season 2 of Blood and Treasure. Did not know there was a season 1 of Blood and Treasure. So just jumping into this, having no idea what it's about. It's kind of it's a little bit American. What's the Nick Cage thing? American Treasure. It's a little American.
Oh yeah, when he was running around in those.
Which is a little bit, rip off of Indiana Jones. This is less Indiana Jones, but it's still, treasure huntery stuff. That's what it is.
A national treasure.
National treasure. Thank you. I mean, it's it could have a little higher production value, but otherwise it's perfectly fine.
If it had higher production value, they'd have hired Nick Cage.
There you go. I think they may in the second season, if it continues to have a life, go there. So let's see, give it a chance.
Yeah.
We got a 4K Ultra HD of Aqua Teen Forever, Plantasm, an Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie, which has a bonus poster. I don't know why I need Aqua Teen Hunger Force in 4K. I really don't. I have no idea. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. The whole point of that thing is that it's badly animated.
Yeah, so, just these sort of flat, meat wad and Frylock and
but look, I mean, this is for fans. If you're not into this thing, this will mean nothing to you. If you are, this will be an occasion for a party. You'll knock yourselves out. Also have the complete third season of Titans, which is now on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm. New season just started, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
How do you feel about what they've done with this show? I mean, it's gone through all kinds of twists and contortions, but it still feels like more DC than anything in the Arrowverse to me.
Yeah. I came to it a little bit late, but because it is on HBO and therefore can be a little, darker, as they say, it's definitely not a CW show. That particular season there is going to go to some pretty dark places.
It does.
It's a little bit crunchy, a little bit crispy. I'm behind about an episode or two in season 4. So
part of me kind of hopes that what they're doing now over at DC with the new, universe, the new DC extended universe that they're putting together under James, what's his name, director of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Yeah,
James Gunn and the other guy, that they're gonna. I'm hoping they'll bring all this stuff together into something a little bit more unified and Marvel-like, but yet different. That's what I'm hoping. Ancient Aliens is in season 15. I'll give you my quick review of that. Season 15, just like season 14. exact same damn thing. That's the reason this show keeps going on. They stick to their knitting. And then HBO's Euphoria, season 1 and season 2.
I just never
pretty interesting show.
Never got into it. You like it?
I came to this. Yeah, you know what? I like her. I like Zendaya.
Oh yeah.
I like her as an actress. I think she makes really interesting choices and she switches it up. Even though I don't like her at all in the Spider-Man movies, I think she's totally wrong there. But I really like her in Dune, and I like her in this. I think the rest of it, I think everything else that's built around her here is a little lacking. But I think she's very good in the middle of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a show about and set in a community of people, these young people with doing stuff, and I don't like any of them.
Drug problems. And,
I don't like any of these people. Yeah, it's just like these people. If I knew these people, I'd be spending all my time trying to get the fuck away from these people.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I try to focus on the drama of it, and it's a rough milieu. There is a question of why even tell this story, but you know what? She makes the most of it. She really
Yeah,
does.
yeah. And it's not like it represents a real thing of folks around and about, but it's like those Larry Clark films from 20, 25 years ago, Kids and whatever. I look at those films and I'm like, okay, sure, but most kids are perfectly fine and not these ridiculous kids that you've made this movie about. So, why do I care about these kids? I don't. They're obnoxious.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about some Coen films right now. Tim?
Yeah.
Coen has released some outstanding movies this month. I mean, outstanding. And they have some of the best audio commentaries I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, yeah,
ever.
Yeah.
I'm going to say unbelievable commentary. So the first one is these are 3 films by Patrice Leconte. Monsieur here, which is already a second adaptation of the original novel, is an extraordinary film. And this was made in 1989. Patrice Leconte, shot this great kind of dramatic thriller with Michel Blanc as this creepy guy, and the relationship he forms with Sandrine Bonnaire, and there's a question of a murder, and who's responsible and who's seen what, and it's fair. But I'll tell you, this audio commentary, it blows my mind. So the bonus features new interview with Patrice Leconte and star Sandrine Bonnaire, an audio commentary track by Wade Major, producer, host of the DigiGods podcast, film critic for CineGods.com and KPCC Film Week. This guy knows his stuff.
I love it.
So,
hey, look, man, because you and I both, we had a thing for Patrice. I still do, but Patrice had this run that more or less begins with Monsieur High, and The Hairdresser's Husband, I think, was the next one.
Yeah.
And it's just this ridiculous run that he had of these movies, Tango, Ridicule.
Ridicule, which was Oscar nominated.
Man on the Train, Widow of St. Pierre. It's just this ridiculous run. Intimate Strangers. This just was nuts. It more or less starts there, I think.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of stuff before that, but yeah,
Monsieur here really is, it's extraordinary. The novel by Georges Simenon, and I had a lot of fun doing this commentary, I'll tell you, because I hadn't revisited the film since I'd seen it the first time. So it was fun to really dig into it and talk about all the nuances to it. One of which is that the original version of that is paid homage to in another one of his films, Love Street. I did the 2 commentaries for these 2 films that are on the Patrice Leconte double feature, which is also out from Coen, which is Felix and Lola and Love Street. Neither of these films were ever released in the U.S. So these were made during that same great period, but they were not released here. And I saw both of them at the American film market at the time, and I reviewed them for box office, and I could never believe that nobody had picked these up. Like, of all the films you're going to leave on the table during that golden period of Patrice Leconte, you're not going to release Felix and Lola and Love Street? Are you crazy? Like, they're great. So I talk about that on these commentaries as well, and get into all the details and where they fit in his body of work, and how he differentiates his style and all of that stuff. Felix and Lola was made in 2001. And it's a sweet love story between Philippe Torreton and Charlotte Gainsbourg. And they meet at the bumper cars of this carnival, this small town carnival. I mean, that's all it is. He's a guy who just runs the operation, and she's this troubled woman who may or may not be lying about everything in her life and her backstory, and what brings them together and kind of obsessively holds them together. And it's just great French drama. It's a great French romantic drama. Love Street, by comparison, is a period film set right after World War II, when all the brothels were closed, when the new government, the new republic, came in and decided to have sort of a stronger morals approach to society. And it's primarily about this former prostitute, Laetitia Casta, and the character played by Petit Louis, is what they call him, Patrick Timsit, who is who grew up in the brothel, right? So he's kind of a defender and a protector of the women, especially the character Marion, played by Laetitia Casta. And it's, how he becomes kind of an almost Cyrano de Bergerac-like character in trying to help further her romantic aspirations. It's a really intriguing film, beautifully photographed. Period recreation is great, and there's a great homage that ties back in with Monsieur, that many people have never picked up on. So I was very happy to kind of throw that in there. So anyway, a couple of DVD Blu-rays with 3 audio commentaries from yours truly on there, which I had an awful lot of fun with. And then also out recently from Cohen is Going Places, the great Bertrand Blier film with Gerard Depardieu, Miu Miu, and Patrick Dewey. That is out in their Classics of French Cinema line. That's a wonderful, wonderful movie. The more recent Gagarine, which is under the Contemporary Classics line, that is a fantastic directing debut for this great young new director, whose name I don't have at the tip of my tongue here. But it basically takes place in a housing project outside Paris, which is named for Yuri Gagarin.
Oh, Fanny. Lettiard and Jeremy, Fanny and Jeremy.
Yeah. This takes place in this housing project just outside Paris, which is named for Yuri Gagarin, who visited after he went into orbit for the Soviet Union back in the 1950s. And that was it sort of was this identification that marked this particular neighborhood, which is now going to be torn down. And this one young man who's from an immigrant African family and has a romance with this girl who's a gypsy, and they're sort of outcasts, and how his dreams of becoming an astronaut in the vein of Yuri Gagarin inspire these flights of fancy. It's really, really a fascinating, powerful film, and it's worth checking out.
His name is Yuri, which is I thought it was interesting. Dennis Levant from those Leo Carax films.
Yeah. And then we have a 4K restoration from the classics of British cinema of Pandora and the Flying Dutchman, which is quite nice. Ava Gardner and James Mason. This has been out before in Blu-ray, but this is a particularly stunning restoration of it. Just beautifully colorful. This is better than everything else I've seen. I mean, I've seen a couple of recent Blu-rays of this, but this one's better than both of those. The Good Boss with Javier Bardem, kind of weirdly comedic. I did not expect this. Bit of a strange film.
Fernando Leon.
It's a business comedy, but it ain't Office Space. I'll say that. I think it applies very specifically to a certain part of Spanish corporate culture. But if you want to see Bardem do something really weird and tweaked, this is a good place to go. Directed by Fernando Leon de Aranda, and it's won a few awards at festivals. Doug Ray Scott in Last Passenger. Did you see this by chance?
Doug Ray, that's that. No, I don't think I saw that.
Yeah, it's I mean, I like Doug Ray Scott.
It's the one on the train. The other one on the train,
that's it.
right?
That's
yeah. I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. It didn't quite work for me. Actually. Yeah, I mean, it's every time they put something on a train, I always feel like the train winds up being more the star than the actors.
Yeah.
Right. It felt a little bit like that here too.
You got that whole thing. Yeah, we're on a train. Something might happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a runaway train, kind of a speed. I mean, it's got a lot of those.
The one that we just talked about earlier with Pitt, the bullet train.
Bullet train.
Yeah.
It's got all that stuff, and I don't know. I mean, Doug Ray Scott's he could be a good action. Maybe might be a little too old. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then Breathe In from a few years ago with Guy Pearce and Felicity Jones, I think it's a little bit overlooked, but I certainly enjoyed it. I don't know if anybody else did. I might be the only one. And
I
then
remember that movie. It was a sweet
right.
movie.
It was okay. It was fine. Didn't do anything wrong. I like them both. And then James Ivory's The Europeans in the latest release from the Merchant Ivory Library, which he did a few of those Henry James movies, The Americans, The Europeans. I still think this is. I mean, it's not perfectly polished James Ivory, but it's getting there.
Yeah, it begins that great run that we know he's going to have that takes us through. What the remains of the day.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. It sort of begins there. This is Lee Remick and they're sort of from that television period. What is this, like 79, something like that?
It's I'll tell you exactly, 79, right on.
Yeah. And so it's right before this a run that we know, that Merchant Ivory run that they have sort of through the middle, from the middle 80s right on through the middle 90s. Yeah.
Let's do some newish movies. BitCon. Did you see BitCon by chance?
I don't think I saw BitCon. Let me see. Take a look at that.
Yeah, so I haven't seen Jeremy Davies in quite a while, and so I thought, okay, well, let's see what's up with this. I mean, it's these are people who haven't been in anything in a while, with the exception of Tom Cavanaugh, who of course keeps showing up on The Flash, playing. I'll bet you Tom Cavanaugh holds the Guinness record for having played the most different characters on a single TV series. Because every time he shows up on The Flash, he's somebody else.
He plays the French guy, and
yeah. So anyway, he's on this along with Jeremy Davies and Frank Whaley, and I mean, it's a gritty little kind of indie crime thing, a little kind of a Bitcoin based heist movie is kind of what this is.
Okay.
Right. And I mean, it's a little, I'll say this, it's kind of hard. I can get excited about a heist film. I can't get excited about Bitcoin. So to try to do, a more Gen Z oriented heist film to make it about Bitcoin, I don't know that you're going for a sweet spot that doesn't really exist, But
yeah.
I admire the effort, and I certainly like the actors. Maybe that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, see, Craig Mums Grant is in that. Mums, I haven't seen him in a while. Mums, he was sort of like a figure in the late 90s and in a lot of movies, TV shows, Oz and stuff like that. Interesting.
Yeah. Easter Sunday with Joe Coy.
I saw that. It was. You had to talk about it on the radio show.
Yeah.
And so to be honest with you, I did not know who Joe Coy was because I just don't follow that particular brand of stand-up comedian. He's a stand-up comedian. He's white and Filipino. I think his father's white, his mother Filipino, and a lot of his humor sort of spins around that. Very, very popular. Had a very, very popular, I think maybe Netflix series or HBO special or whatever the hell it was. And anyway, if you're from a certain segment of the of the sort of comedian loving community, you know who Joe Coy is, and you've seen him. So he got a shot at making this movie with Jay Kachandar directing, from Super Troopers, all that kind of stuff, right? And they make this movie, and this movie is like it's like all stand up comedians when they make a movie. Yeah. The first thing they do is get some other stand-up comedians to be in their movie. so that you have this movie where Tiffany, go ahead, put your name, Tiffany. You know her name. Shows up in this movie, and just all these comedians roaming around the movie. It's like, okay, this is fine, but mostly what happens is we watch Joey Coy stop and do about 5 minutes of his comedy routine.
Yep.
Which sort of roams around issues of his family, and then we're watching this movie, which is full of quote unquote his family. So we're watching the people that are more or less the subjects of his jokes and his stand-up routine actually play those characters out in this sort of wacky story. Which is all over the place. It includes Lou Diamond Phillips. It includes Manny Pacquiao's boxing gloves and all kinds of nutty stuff. Bit by bit is kind of funny. Jay is in the movie, and he's actually kind of funny. But mostly it's just Joe Coy doing his stand-up routine. And you can just, kind of go to Netflix and watch that anyway, but you don't really have to have it wrapped in a movie, but it's okay. It's okay.
The Duke is a pretty good little fact-based drama with Jim Broadbent and Helen Mirren that was released it was released earlier this year, but they had an Oscar qualification run end of last year. It didn't really pan out. This was the last film directed by Roger Michell, the late wonderful director of so many cool films, including Notting Hill. And it takes place in 1961. It's about this old guy, this crusty old left-wing labor voting taxi driver who's really mad about, in the UK, you have to pay to get the BBC, or you pay to support you don't get TV service unless you're paying the license fee to support the BBC.
Yeah.
And he thinks that's totally fascist. So he's refusing to do it. Anyway, his protest all leads to actually winding up where he steals a famous painting. Yeah. And this actually happened.
Yeah, he stole Goya's portrait of the Duke of Wellington. It was 1961. He actually did
it. And it's about what transpired thereafter. And I think they hit the tone just right. I mean, this didn't do bang up business, but it was still kind of tail end of the pandemic. And I think that hurt the film. But otherwise, it would have done really beautiful business. It's, Jim Broadbent's wonderful. Helen Mirren is equally wonderful as his wife. And I think, just as a tribute to the great Roger Michell, it's worth checking out. You really should see it. It's a whole lot of fun. Yeah. A whole lot of fun. I got a couple of ninja themed things here that I'm going to make super quick mention of, just because it's two ninja themed, ninja title things. Ninja Badass, and the other one is Checkered Ninja. They have nothing to do with each other. One of them, and they're both, not the least bit commercial. There's no reason why anybody should care about any of them. The Checkered Ninja, first of all, is 3D animated. It's just about this young kid, this high school kid who, decides to, dress up like a ninja in checkered clothing. Let me take it back. It's a doll which he dresses up in checkered clothing, which is actually, how do I even put this? Let me try. Let me try a third time. He's got a doll that becomes a ninja that comes alive.
Yeah.
How do and they wind up having ninja adventures together. The dumbest story ever, but somehow it's got a little bit of charm to it, and I don't know. I believe this was actually made in with the participation of animators from Thailand, because there's a whole Thai thing to it. I'm not quite clear, but regardless, it just doesn't make sense. But it has a charming subtext to it, and if you can kind of stick with the emotional through line, this weird little ninja doll with the buttons for eyes is, I don't know, it doesn't work. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. But anyway, Ninja Badass is by a guy named Ryan Harrison. It's weird, man. It has nothing to do with ninjas. It's this guy who is very unusual. I will say this. It is a very strange and disturbing and somewhat debauched road trip that involves some very deeply, deeply deranged obsessions. And I think this movie is just trying to shock people. I will share nothing about any of those details. I'll just make mention of it, that if you kind of feel like you want to check out something called Ninja Badass, you have been warned.
Yeah, not our fault.
Not our fault. Let's see. Anything? Oh, you know what?
Do you have bodies?
Yeah, yeah. Let's pull that out.
Which was kind of fun to me. The hurricane party in this mansion. And a whole bunch of these friends are having this party, and it all kind of goes sideways. And I thought it was kind of like a fun millennial hack and slash is what it is, a hack and slash.
It's a horror comedy.
It's a horror comedy, but it's
we're talking about Pete Davidson earlier. This is the kind of stuff Pete Davidson's doing now, yeah.
And Lee Pace is in it. I like Lee. Anyway, as these things go, it was a fairly decent one. It came out around the same time as that movie X and a few other ones that live in the same sort of space. Not bad. Bodies.
Let's talk just for a second, because we're closing down near the end of the show. Let's talk about Rob Zombie's Munsters movie.
What the hell, man? We talked about that the moment. I think Mark sent us a notification, somebody of that, and I thought it was a joke at first.
Yeah,
but it wasn't.
We watched the trailer, and I think you made some quip about the trailer that looked like it was shot for about $1.50.
$1.50, bud.
Yeah, this is, and of course his wife, what's her name, Zombie, plays Lily.
Sherry Moon Zombie, something like that.
I have seen fan fiction Star Trek movies made in people's backyards that had higher production value than this movie. Rob Zombie claims he loves the Munsters. Nobody who loves the Munsters would make this movie.
No.
This was announced, and then it was immediately shuttled very quickly as a straight-to-video release. This is truly awful.
Yeah, it really, really is. And, and Rob, he House of a Thousand Corpses and all those sort of really gritty horror things that he did, sort of aping those kind of movies from the 70s.
Oh
okay,
gosh.
Whatever. People dug those movies. That's okay. I don't get what the hell is going on here. And frankly, one of the things that I said is I just don't understand how you give Rob Zombie this particular piece of IP. To work with, or how he got a hold of it. Maybe he was I think you suggested, or Ray suggested that perhaps he was a hired gun. A producer had the stuff, and they hired a gun, and Rob was just a gun on it. I don't know what happened, but man, what a misfire! Really
such a misfire, and also because he gets so much about look. It's an origin story. Presumably, this is how Lily and Herman met. Not that is what's wrong with this. I can't even get to that it's just everything about it is just wrong and terrible. It's just really, really bad on every level.
Yeah, Rob wrote the script. So
it's just so bad. And I didn't even listen to the commentary. I didn't want to, it was too painful. But then I contrast this with this lovely, lovely release from MPI, Marineland Carnival, with the Munsters TV show cast members. And what's great about this, which was, made back like late 60s. I don't know exactly what year.
It's 65, man.
Okay, so 65, right?
So in the heart of it, yeah.
Right in the heart of it. I mean, truly, truly, just a wonderful, wonderful piece of nostalgia. Now, for those who don't know, Marineland was a theme park. It was a marine theme park like SeaWorld that was on the Palos Verdes Peninsula in Los Angeles County for many, many years. And it did the same thing as SeaWorld. It, had, orca shows and sea lion shows, and you feed them and they bark and they jump around and they play games. And, you could go into the aquarium and see fish and the whole 9 yards, right? And I went there a lot as a kid. I loved their ices. I would eat those ices. It was fantastic. It was great. Whole lot of fun. So what this is basically this promotional TV show that used the cast members of the Munsters to kind of push. It was just, it to sort of push the idea of the theme park. And it's a fascinating, weird little archival snippet from the 60s. The kind of thing that doesn't exist anymore, and it just takes you back. It's really, really wonderful. It's great. I just think it's so much fun, and it's got some wonderful little like a Danny Kaye show thing on here, and there's a bunch of other little tidbits from the era. But it's great. Marineland Carnival and More Lost Treasures. It's really, really fun. So everything that the zombie film did wrong, this is like a palate cleanser to me. Fresh wind and Von DiCarlo and Al Lewis and Pat Priest and Butch Patrick. They all, that cast, incomparable.
Fantastic.
You remember No Escape?
No Escape.
Ray Liotta movie.
Oh yeah. Kind of like an out of normal character Ray Liotta movie. For that period where he wasn't playing a gangster.
Yeah.
We lost
great supporting
Lake Bell and all that. I remember that. Yeah.
This was the great supporting performance. Ernie Hudson. Owen
Wilson, I think, is in that movie.
Lance Henriksen, Kevin Dillon. Really a fascinating film. Anyway, this is the movie. It was directed by Martin Campbell. This is the movie that got Martin Campbell the James Bond franchise.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's utterly fascinating. It's a really, really good and underrated movie. It's now out from Unearthed Classics on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's kind of it's going to be a little hard to find. People may not know it, but dig it up. It's out on Blu-ray from Unearthed Classics. And Ray Liotta might be one of the best things Ray Liotta did. It actually takes place. This is what I love.
The 1994 film.
It's 1994. But you know what year it takes place?
What, 2022?
That's it.
I love it.
That's it. It takes place in this year. And you know what? As dystopian as it is, it actually makes this year look pretty darn good.
Michael Lerner. I know the film we're talking about now.
It's sort of an inverse Escape from New York scenario, right? He's a Marine captain who killed his commanding officer, and the assassination of the commanding officer is shown in a single overhead shot during the credit sequence. It's really, really great. It's really terrific. Very smart. And you don't quite know why he did it. Anyway, he's banished to this prison island. Michael Lerner is the guy who runs the island. Lance Henriksen is on it, and Stuart Wilson, Ernie Hudson, Kevin Dillon. They're all, the guys who are also on the island. And then he has to kind of escape, and you got to find out why he did it. And it's pretty great. Gail Ann Hurd produced it. Graham Revell has a great score, and there are some interesting extras. A new interview with Martin Campbell and some other great stuff. So no escape.
That's before Mask of Zorro. Martin Campbell. Yep. Yeah,
that was the one. That's the one.
Casino Royale, all the kind of stuff. But that's the one that got him to Casino Royale.
Okay, that got him to.
What did he do? Did he do
GoldenEye?
GoldenEye
was the first one.
Pierce. Yeah.
That's it. Earth Girls Are Easy.
One of my favorite films on the planet.
Jim Carrey, Damon Wayans, and Jeff Goldblum in colored fur,
and Gina Davis in a bikini that was in what year was that movie? In 1988, in a bikini that will just crush you. It was. I just love this. It was so much fun. Julian Temple, Julie Brown, and Charlie Coffey writing. When I first moved up into the Valley, I lived a few blocks. When I lived on Colfax up in Burbank.
Yep.
I lived a few blocks from Charlie Coffey. And he and Julie, Terrence E. McNally, who all wrote this together way back in the middle 80s. After Julie Brown, I guess, it was after she had been on, MTV. She was one of those, MTV girls.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. I would hang out with them and we'd chit chat about this movie. It's just, really thoroughly enjoy this funny, very sweet movie. I don't think you could make this movie today.
Probably
not as a feature film. I don't think you could. I don't know.
Yeah, no, probably not. But it is out from the Vestron series, the collector's series, from Lionsgate, and it's on Blu-ray and it has a digital copy. And have knock yourselves out. It's a great little bit of nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wind up with just a couple last things here. Let me see if I can pull out some highlights. It is the 90th anniversary of the Walter Huston, Joan Crawford film Rain, which is also out from VCI by way of MVD. This is really a kind of a forgotten film. It's based on the W. Somerset Maugham short story about a prostitute who has to go to the South Seas. Escapes having to be prosecuted and imprisoned, get her life restarted, and it's a really, really powerful story when you read the actual short story. And the movie doesn't quite capture that, but it's still kind of this nostalgic classic in its own right in very, very different ways, because Joan Crawford, very young Joan Crawford, and her performance it's considered one of the hallmark performances of her career. And it's a really interesting pre-code production that too many people have kind of just let slide. And there's some very interesting bits on here. There's an alternate 76-minute cut, which is really interesting. The one was shown on one side of the Atlantic, the other one on the other side of the Atlantic, and the original trailer, and poster and photo gallery, and a great commentary by film scholar Richard Barrieros, who's a historian of this particular era and these films in particular. But yeah, and if you've ever seen the movie Sadie Thompson, that's basically the same story. But Rain. Its 90th anniversary, great classic pre-code movie that deserves to be rediscovered, especially for its performance by Joan Crawford. And then, Tim, I'm going to take us out with volume 21 of Beyond Genres, Worlds on Film Beyond Genres, volume 21. This is an Australian release from this amazing series, not available here, a Blu-ray of Hal Needham's Megaforce.
Oh, wow. the Megaforce is well, look, when I think about Megaforce, Barry, what's his name?
Bostwick.
Barry Bostwick and
Michael
Beck, and Barry had that hair, and he's wearing this.
And Persis Kambata.
Yeah, and he's wearing this kind of a unitard thing through this whole thing. It's all like a gold lame unitard with the headband.
Gold lame unitard.
And it's all the stuff with these crazy motorcycles and Edward Mulhare, who was in Henry Silva and just all those guys. It's just, man, and because it was of course biting into a whole genre of movie that had been pushed off. Right after Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. But they made these movies for $1.95, but you could get a bunch of those motorcycles and put that design on them and do these wacky things. And there's that scene at the end where he flies on the and he's still flying.
And those motorcycles all had rocket launchers on the front of them. And being the age that I was at the time, I looked at that and I'm like, you really couldn't spend for something better than just an SD's rocket kit you mail order? Like, that's all they were. They were mail order SD's rockets that they just glued onto the fronts of these motorcycles. It was terrible. I remember the day I saw this with a bunch of buddies very, very well. It was a summer day, and we went out and we're like, dude, there's like 3 new movies this weekend. This is awesome. So we went out and we just nailed it, just one after the other. It was in Westwood, and we just hit one theater after another. And we saw The Road Warrior.
Yeah,
loved
good
it.
Choice.
We saw Blade Runner.
Good
gnarly
move.
Dude. And then we saw
move.
Megaforce. Oh man, that sucked.
It's like,
that was our day. Those 3 in one day.
2 out of 3.
But I'll say this. As bad as this movie is, all these years later, I have a great deal of nostalgic affection for it.
Yeah, I do too. That unitard with that hair, and he flies onto that. Yeah, that's a whole movie. Yeah, Michael Beck.
I don't know what they were thinking, but my goodness. And
then it's a Hal Needham film, and there are these big, gigantic scenes out in the middle of the desert with all these motorcycles and things. That's all like Hal Needham kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but mostly I'm like, I'm not exactly sure why we threw this to Hal. Because Hal, you need Burt Reynolds running around with a cowboy hat on or something like that.
Yeah, you do. Well, anyway, Megaforce is out on Blu-ray, but you gotta get the import. This is from Umbrella Entertainment. It is their Worlds on Film Beyond Genres Volume 21, and it is it's quite a movie. It's got extras on it. It's got documentary trailers. All the stuff that you would expect it to have. An interview with Barry Bostwick and Michael Beck from a few years ago. There's even there was a Megaforce video game for the Atari 2600, which I had no idea. And Barry Bostwick and Bob Lindemeyer do an audio commentary. There's also an audio commentary with a big fan named Stephen Vag. I'll be honest, no offense to anybody, but this movie doesn't really benefit from a commentary, including the mega fan. Might be better off just watch it and make up your own mind. All right. Well, with that, we are done. Tim, have a fantastic Thanksgiving. You staying in town? Or you headed out?
I'm going to stay in town, and I may go visit our friend Francesca down in Inglewood. I might do that. I'm not exactly sure, but I'll definitely will not be in St. Louis. I'm going to go home for Christmas. I think.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, have a good one. We have no idea what we're doing yet for Thanksgiving. We're planning. We're still having practices. We're going to the area tournament.
Oh wow! Well,
it's very exciting.
You got to stay in shape.
Once again, we're very, very happy for Mark Kaiser tying the knot, wishing him well. If any of you want to send your wishes, you can go ahead and email them to us at gods@digigods.com. We will forward them. And until then, have a fantastic Thanksgiving, and we'll see you guys thereafter, probably for our holiday show and gift guide. Still trying to put some of those details together. So we will see you all in early December.